Joining me live now from Wellington is Barry Soper. Barry is the political editor at New Zealand radio station Newstalk ZB. Barry, thank you for your time as always. How's this announcement by Jacinda Ardern been received?
Oh, good afternoon, Kieran. Long time no talk. Look, it's been obviously welcome because New Zealand has felt that the drawbridge has been up for far too long, and there's been continuing calls for the government to bring it down and to allow certainly New Zealanders in Australia in particular to come home. Now, there was a strong call for that before Christmas. This week, you will have heard in the article or the item before me that Charlotte Bellis, the Al Jazeera journalist in Afghanistan, that really embarrassed the government, and New Zealand was seen as something of a laughing stock, not allowing a pregnant woman to come home and give birth, and that's a Kiwi. And there's arguments through the legal process at the moment. The Bill of Rights in New Zealand, like every other country, your passport is in fact that. It's your passport to get into the country. Well, Kiwis have been blocked from returning to the country, and this afternoon's announcement by the Prime Minister, it was expected and it was welcome.
So, copping a fair bit of flack, and as you mentioned, Charlotte's case there, but what's the broader opinion, the broader public opinion? I know in WA, Mark McGowan's been the subject of quite a fair bit of fierce criticism, but still around 70% of the population, according to polls, back him. What's it like across the ditch?
Well, it's not such good news for Jacinda Ardern. Of course, going into the 2020 election, Labor got an outright majority, which has never been known under the current electoral system. And that was all about COVID. People had been living in fear, and that fear factor put her back into office convincingly then. Her fortunes have waned somewhat. She's now at the last opinion polls, the first major one for the year. Her personal opinion had slipped from 62% at the last election to 35% now. So you can see she's been on the slide, and she's not as popular as she once was, although there are people still in this country living in fear of Omicron, and I think, they need not be so fearful, but nevertheless, the government has kept them in their place. So, yeah, she's not universally popular, certainly not as popular as she once was.
So what's the latest in terms of those COVID numbers? And separate to that, but relevant to that answer you just gave our viewers, what's the opposition like? Because they've gone through a tough few years.
Yeah, well, the opposition have gone through several leaders in the last couple of years, and that was post the 2020 election. They've now got the former Air New Zealand chief executive, who was on one of Jacinda Ardern's own business advisory councils when COVID broke out. He's now the leader of the opposition, been in Parliament for just over a year. But look, his own personal popularity has been soaring, not quite to the extent that Jacinda Ardern's did when she took over the Labor Party, but nevertheless, the gap between the two major parties now is only about 8%. And that's quite significant because it was much more than that just not too long ago. So, everyone is now talking about the possibility, and we're still 2 years away, of a change in government towards the end of next year. So, anything can happen, as we've seen with this dreadful pandemic.